Phil Spencer has said many times that Xbox lost the worst generation that they could have ever lost. The generation where people were building their digital libraries.
We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games.
PlayStation and Steam ate Xbox's lunch, and that left Microsoft in dead last place yet again. I think that this is Microsoft realizing in real time that they just don't have the ability to compete with PlayStation or Steam as things stand now. So rather than playing the same game and knowing that they're going to lose that game, Microsoft has decided to change the game that they're playing. I think that this can go one of two ways, and I want to talk about both ways that it can go in this video. By the way, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody that's been subscribing lately. If it's your first time here, I'm Bill, and I cover video game news as well as hardware reviews and a weekly podcast. So if any of that sounds good, consider subscribing. It's free. Now, back to what I was saying, which was, that's right. Xbox decided to change the game, which is where Game Pass came from. Xbox believes that predictable revenue that they can always count on is better than revenue that ebbs and flows with significant peaks and valleys. Game Pass currently has over 35 million subscribers. That gives Xbox a revenue stream that is somewhere between 350 million and 700 million every single month. That's depending on which tier of Game Pass different people are subscribed to. If you layer that on top of their more traditional income from selling their games, not only on Xbox systems, but also on PC stores, on PlayStation, and on Nintendo systems, it makes a lot of sense that Xbox is devaluing exclusivity. So why would you buy an Xbox console if there's no exclusive games? We'll get to that soon. Recently, Xbox posted this video where Sarah Bond, who's the current president of Xbox, talked about the future of Microsoft's gaming division. She started with this.
At Xbox, our vision is for you to play the games you want with the people you want, anywhere you want. That's why we're investing in our next generation hardware lineup across console, handheld, PC, cloud, and accessories.
So first of all, I love the first part of this statement. I think exclusives, for the most part, hurt the industry more than they help it. Yes, it helps ship consoles, but if games are on all platforms, then customers get to play the games on their terms, which to me is always a win. But I also think that this is Xbox saying, you've shown us that you prefer to play games everywhere but on Xbox. Game Pass does well, but our hardware is dead last, so we're going to stop caring about hardware. That doesn't mean that Xbox is going to stop making hardware, but they'll stop trying to tie software to hardware because Microsoft has decided that Xbox isn't their platform, Game Pass is their platform. So let's change the definition of what Xbox is. What does Xbox mean now? Well, it means
our next generation hardware lineup across console, handheld, PC, cloud, and accessories.
Okay, so Xbox isn't a box, it's a brand, and the box isn't the platform, Game Pass is the platform. So how does Xbox get more people to sign up for Game Pass? Well, first, they need a shitload of games to be available for it, which is why they spent $70 billion acquiring Activision Blizzard King. That's step one. Step two is to put Game Pass in more places. Now, I don't see Sony or Nintendo allowing Game Pass on their devices because we've seen what happens to stores on devices where Game Pass exists. Look at Xbox. If you have one from this generation, the Game Pass generation, how many games have you actually purchased for that device? For me, it's just 2. All the other games that I've been playing on my Xbox have been Game Pass games. It's a Game Pass machine for me. I think that Sony and Nintendo are rightly afraid that if Game Pass is on their systems, people will spend less on games. So Xbox can't get other platforms to host Game Pass, so how do they get Game Pass on more devices? Well, by shipping more devices. Xbox isn't running away from hardware, they have to embrace hardware, which brings up a huge problem for Xbox. If there aren't any exclusives, why would I buy your hardware? If I can play all of the Xbox games on PC or on PlayStation or on Nintendo systems, why would I buy an Xbox?
That's a good question.
So Xbox is partnering with AMD to make a bunch of different devices, or as Sarah Bond calls it,
a portfolio of devices, including our next generation Xbox consoles, in your living room and in your hand.
So right there is confirmation that Microsoft isn't exiting hardware. They specifically called out consoles and handhelds, but as I asked a minute ago, why would anybody buy an Xbox if I can just buy a PlayStation and then I can play all of the PlayStation games and I can play the Xbox games because Xbox is no longer about exclusivity anymore? The only way that Microsoft is going to sell the consoles is if they do something that Sony can't or won't. And the only thing that I can think of is to make their console a PC. This has been rumored for a long time at this point, and I've talked about it on a million times, both in videos and on the podcast, link down below if you want to check out the podcast. But this all goes back to the leaks that showed a unified user interface across multiple pieces of hardware. I guess you could call it.
It's a portfolio of devices.
And on that UI, Steam was shown. Fast forward to Summer Games Fest, where during the Xbox showcase, Sarah Bond again told us this.
Our next step is to unify your gaming no matter where you buy or play. So we're building an Xbox experience designed for players, not locked to a single store or tied to one device.
Now, this is when they were showing off the Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X. If they are going to unify our gaming across a portfolio of devices, then those devices need to have commonality. They need to have the same library. You need to turn on your Xbox, whatever that is, and always have the same experience. The only way to do that is if the new home console is just a PC, which totally lines up with what we saw at Summer Games Fest, with many games listing available platforms as PlayStation, Switch 2, and Xbox PC. So when Xbox says that their new home console, I believe that it is a new home console and that the home console is a PC with this new UI that they've been working on for the Xbox Ally and Ally X. Xbox is just Windows now. In fact, Sarah Bond said this.
This is all about building you a gaming platform that's always with you, so you can play the games you want across devices anywhere you want, delivering you an Xbox experience not locked to a single store or tied to one device. That's why we're working closely with the Windows team to ensure that Windows is the #1 platform for gaming.
The #1 platform for gaming, not Xbox, Windows. So if this new hardware from Xbox powered by AMD is actually just an Xbox PC and they call it Xbox, then that is a massive win for customers because we will have a low-cost way of getting games running on our TVs. If people can either go and build a PC or go to a store and buy an Xbox PC and it has a controller-first experience, plays all the Windows games, including the PlayStation games that are on Steam, as well as on your previous Xbox libraries, well, that's very compelling. That's a very compelling proposition, and I can see a lot of people buying an Xbox in that case. That is a win. But remember how I said that there's two ways that this can go? Here's the rub. A compatibility with the existing library of Xbox games. That's a problem. We've all seen licensing issues get in the way of games in the past, and I'm sure Xbox first-party games will all be available on Xbox PC under the Play Anywhere nomenclature. But when Xbox worked with third parties to bring games to the original Xbox, the Xbox 360, and the Xbox One, they didn't have this Play Anywhere marketing, and that means lots of those games were never ported to the PC. So how does Xbox deal with that? I think that the only viable solution is emulation.
Hey!
Which is how backwards compatibility works on an Xbox already. When you put a disc of a backwards compatible game into one of the later systems, it downloads a repackaged form of the game and it doesn't actually run off the disc. Over time, Microsoft has continued to add more and more games to the list of backwards compatible games on their platforms. In 2020, they said resurrecting titles from history often presents a complex mix of technical and licensing challenges, but the team is committed to doing everything we can to continue to preserve our collective gaming legacy. Essentially, licensing is the real issue here. I think that it's hard for Xbox to convince publishers to allow people that bought a copy of the game on Xbox to be able to then play that on a different platform like PC, even if it is called an Xbox PC. If they can't, then the previous promises that they've made of backwards compatibility can be a real hindrance to the Xbox as a brand. In 2024, Sarah Bond said this: "We have formed a new team dedicated to game preservation, important to all of us at Xbox and the industry itself. We are building on a strong history of delivering backwards compatibility to our players, and we remain committed to bringing forward the amazing library of Xbox games for future generations of players to enjoy." Phil Spencer, when talking about backwards compatibility, said,
"And when we look at future hardware generations and what we're going to support, making sure that we respect, which is the word I use, respect the investments that people have made in Xbox going forward is fundamental. And the fact that you get entitlements when you buy a game from us on both Windows and Xbox also means you have the ability to play that game across a multitude of devices, which I think furthers the compatibility of the games that you own.
So it seems like the Xbox strategy going forward would have to be getting these publishers not to port the games to Windows, because if that hasn't happened already, getting devs to go back and put that work in is just about impossible, I think. But just to allow Xbox to use emulation of Xbox games on Xbox PC, either through digital games that are linked to your account or discs if the next Xbox actually has a disc. And as Phil said, that has to be fundamental. If Xbox can pull that off, then it is a swish. But if they can't, then they've gone back on a promise that they've made to customers multiple times, in which case that's a huge miss. And the only exit strategy that I can see for them at that point is, if it doesn't work, is to walk away from hardware entirely, kind of like Sega did, which I don't want, because I want as much competition as I can get, because companies, whenever they have to compete, we always get a better product. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching, and if it's your first time here, please subscribe. Stay rad. Take it easy, everybody. I'll see you on the next one.